Public opinions about a secret report quickened the pulse of national politics this week. Elizabeth May and Jagmeet Singh both read the top secret report on foreign interference. But while May offered a message of reassurance, Singh sounded the alarm. Meanwhile, the Liberals used changes to the capital gains tax to go on offense against the Conservatives, while the travel habits of a rarely in Ottawa MP had New Democrats playing some defense this week. Let's bring in our party insiders. Here in studio, Fred Delory is a former, that's Melanie Richer. She's a former communications director with the NDP. I think we're going to go to Fred. There we go. There's Fred Delory. He's a former Conservative National Campaign Manager. And joining us remotely this week is former Liberal ministerial staffer Greg McEachern. And we should explain, Greg, where you are, because when you said you couldn't be here in studio today, you said you get a good location. He is at St. FX, and that is the replica of Brian Mulroney's Prime Minister's office. You can see the Chateau Laurier in the background and other things. I think that's the Chateau Laurier. He's not in Ottawa. Otherwise, he'd be here. Anyway, Greg, Fred, Mel, good to see you all.
Good to see you.
All right.
Welcome to my man cave.
Yes, you're. All right. Well, let's start with you, Prime Minister McEachern. I don't know if you have been read in on the secret report from NSI COP, but what is your impression of the impressions that all the leaders are sharing with us and the way this is being handled and rolled out?
Yeah, it was a very interesting week, and I'm going to approach this two ways. One is, foreign interference, obviously very concerning. We need to know what's going on. But, it's not surprising. Politics is being played. Elizabeth May did a very interesting thing. She played to her brand, and I'm sure there's a lot of MPs that find Elizabeth May exasperating. But she has also a reputation for reading every bill that comes into the House of Commons. And she did a news conference this week that lasted over an hour. And she took question after question, and she really lowered the temperature. And for someone that's, part of a two MP party, a huge amount, on the political side, I would say, very, very successful for her. If I'm going to be, I don't want to sound cynical, but she was able to break through and get that message through. The problem, I guess, for everyone else is, when we're trying to figure out what's in this report, the NDP leader comes out and seems to contradict her, even though Elizabeth May has since tried to say that they have more in common on this than not. But the problem I have with Jagmeet Singh's approach here is that it seems very much in terms of his political goals, in terms of what we've talked about in terms of his wins around dental care. He doesn't talk about the win. He just goes into attacking, the Prime Minister. And I think Marie Vestel said this on an earlier panel, that it did feel with Mr. Singh that, he was more about attacking the Prime Minister. And I think the problem there is that's not serving Canadians well. If you're trying to fulfill your political agenda, when we're all trying to figure out, what else is going on. And I think he missed an opportunity with, the Conservative leader not reading the report, and there being problems with two Conservative leaderships. I think he missed a huge opportunity there.
Okay, Mel, what are your thoughts on, we got the message of reassurance from Elizabeth May, and then Jagmeet Singh sort of pulled the fire alarm in the foyer of the House of Commons. Now, Elizabeth May said she's very worried about foreign interference, not worried about her colleagues in the House of Commons. Jagmeet Singh would not say that. I don't know if he's talking about Han Dong, who he's willing to say he's concerned about, or if there's more. Where do you think the public understanding is of this issue at the end of this week?
Well, I think there's probably two understandings from the public. I think there is a lot of Canadians in this country who feel like they could actually be targeted by, some of the government that's part of their ancestry. Yeah. And I think that's what we saw with Jagmeet this week, right? We saw Jagmeet say that he is one of the MPs that was targeted. He didn't go into any more details than that.
And he's had a security detail because of threats against his safety after the Niger assassination.
Yeah, so when you have those things and you know that other Canadians who, have the same kind of background or who have similar backgrounds are terrified about speaking dissent about a different government, like that's something to take seriously. If you're looking at a report and you see that there are potentially people that you sit with in the House who have, willingly or maybe not totally knowing willingly, who have been part of that in putting the security of Canadians and, the security of our country at risk, I think that's pretty serious. As it relates to this subject, Jagmeet from the beginning, and this is the death that we saw. This is other issues that we saw has always been very prime ministerial about this, has always been very statesman-like about this. So the fact that he came out this week and took these concerns very seriously, or said that these were very serious concerns, I take that at face value. As it relates to, I guess one of Greg's points about Pierre Poilievre is, there is no excuses anymore to not be read in to read this report. I think at this point, if you are looking to be the next prime minister, if you are somebody who is going to take these issues seriously, like drop that game, read yourself in and read the report. I think it's too important not to.
So Fred, the implications for your party in this report is that a leadership race, I think you managed Aaron O'Toole's campaign, did you not? You ran in the lead, like his leadership campaign as well as the national, like you won that race. And this report suggests China, I believe it was, played a role in that, maybe India in the one that Poilievre won. Is that the sort of thing he should read in on and get informed on so he can see if he needs to change how conservative leadership races are run?
Well, the comments from the Conservatives on this is that their belief is that if they read in it, they can't ask questions and push hard. Because once you go too far into it, once you read it, you're not supposed to comment on what you've seen in detail anyway. So that's been their reason. Whether it's the right approach or not, I don't know. But after seeing, Ms. May read it and Mr. Singh read it and have two completely different outcomes from it, I don't know what we get from it from another party leader reading it.
But what would that party leader get from it, I wonder, right? Only the Conservatives can deal with issues in the Conservative race, right?
Will he help make sure the next Conservative leadership race is okay? I don't think that's something that he's too concerned about right now.
Well, maybe not.
I think at the end of the day, what NSICOP should have been charged with, and this is something I wrote about a year and a half ago and talked to you about on your show, is NSICOP should have been given this mandate to look into this, to dig into it, and put forth recommendations to deal with it. That's something that's missing, is what's coming from this. From the outset, I've been saying that the institutions are not communicating together, and that's the legislation that needs to come in. From what I understand, the RCMP can't even really do anything with this stuff because of the ways intelligence is handled, which means we're going nowhere with this. This is just, we're talking about it. We're going to talk about it for a few more weeks. Nothing is actually going to come about to deal with this issue.
Yeah, I mean, look, there is legislation moving through Parliament right now, C-70, to deal with foreign interference, and there are recommendations, Greg, just to close the loop on this, that from NSICOP on having Elections Canada maybe take over nominations or play a role in leadership races. I don't know if they want to completely take them over, but it seems like setting maybe baseline standards for who can vote and what your rules should be. It seems like the parties are inviting some sort of regulation if they're not going to act on it themselves.
Yeah, and I think the vast majority of nomination races, I'm not going to speak about leadership races, but the vast majority of nomination races at the local level are fine. And I think a lot of people in Canada, a lot of active partisans at the constituency level would be surprised by this. But I think it's high time that, I heard one of the earlier panels say that the Liberals don't want to do anything on this. I'm not sure that's entirely true.
Well, the statement we got from the party says that it's not specific at all. It doesn't sound like there's an action plan to deal with it. I don't know if you have different insight.
Yeah. Well, my insight would be based on local constituency presidents, not, this is not why they're involved in politics. And I mean, there's a long history of this, of buses being sent to the Bowery and rounding up people to, vote in leadership reviews. I think Elizabeth May has mentioned that there's a huge history of this. But we're also missing another part too, David, which is the role of the media. You've, I think, have talked about this, have asked about this, but it wasn't that long ago that, a Post-Media newspaper talked about an allegation about drug use and the Prime Minister and his plane in India, which was not true, and that got printed. And that's not that long ago. So I do think that when my problem with Mr. Singh is I think he really changed the channel and in a way that didn't help Canadians, and I'm not sure it helped himself.
Okay, Mel, you have last word on that because I think you might want to rebut it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I totally disagree on that one. I think out of all the leaders, he obviously feels this a little bit differently. So I think what we saw yesterday is probably a little bit of that, and taking this seriously for folks who are pretty scared of this in a really real way.
Okay, Fred, I want to talk about the issue of the capital gains inclusion rate, not the technical fine points, but this wedge that the Liberals tried to play this week by having the separate vote on it. Pierre Poilievre voted against it, didn't surprise me, and also spelled out in a video that had some questionable images in it, a plan to set a commission to come up with a tax plan after winning government. Do you think the wedge worked, and do you think the Conservatives can really wait until after winning the election to tell the country what they want to do on taxes?
On both fronts, I would say the wedge did not work. It was certainly a wedge. They broke it out from the budget to have a separate week on it and discussion on it. The numbers haven't moved favorably for the Liberals at all. It's not catching on. They've not communicated it well. It's so confusing what this tax increase is. And the facts were, I'm just calling it a tax increase. I'm not even right there. There's no simple messaging. Is it going after the rich? Is it going after the have-yachts, as Poilievre once said, and now Trudeau's now saying? It's a mess, I think, at how the Liberals have communicated this. And the Conservatives, they were very quiet on it for a long time too, where they didn't come out. And I think that allowed the Liberals to maybe think they had something there. I don't think they have anything there on this issue.
Mel, what about you? What do you think? Is it an effective play by the Liberals this week?
Yeah, I'm of two minds a little bit, and I'm just going to rewind to the first time that we talked about this on this panel. I was like, that the way that they're talking about it isn't actually true. And I myself was wrong because I didn't totally understand, the issue at that time, right? So I think had the Liberals been able to properly communicate who this is actually going to impact and who it's not going to impact, I think this would have been a more strategic move as it relates to the Conservatives. I don't think the Conservatives want to be talking about this issue. This is actually opposite to their message of, reaching out to the little guy when they're talking about the capital gains tax. They are not standing up for the little guy, right? So I don't think they want to talk about it. So it could have been a strategic move. I think the problem is, Canadians across the country are hearing about this. They don't totally understand it. They don't know if it's going to impact them, if it could one day impact that. And I think the fact that it wasn't communicated, I think the way that the Liberals were trying to communicate it has made it a bit of a stalemate instead of a win.
So Greg, there may be some people, though, who consider themselves to be the little guy, who are worried about how this is going to affect them. People who have bought rental properties that they want to sell for their retirement nest egg. People who want doctors are now saying, we might move shop because of the changes to our tax policy. I mean, there is a downside risk in the argument the Liberals are trying to have here.
Yeah, I mean, look, we for months and months talked about the affordability crisis and how, younger demographics can't get into the housing market, and we needed to do something about it. That it was never, we need to do something about it, but let's protect the doctors. As someone pointed out on Twitter this week, the opposition, especially the Conservatives, are talking about how people can't afford anything. But in the same breath, it seems like this is going to be impacting, millions and millions of people when it's not. It's less than 1%. So for me, the big takeaway was it took 2 months for the Conservatives to come up with their position on this. And that's not exactly what I would describe as nimble. So I think, whether or not Canadians are paying attention as the House rushes through to get all the legislation we want to get done before the House rises for the summer, whether or not Canadians, realized what, the leader was doing. I have to say, the Conservative leader has done some really good videos. I don't think this was one of them. It's very heavy on jargon. And then again, the use of the dictators, it's certainly a choice to use photos of Adolf Hitler in the couple of days after the D-Day anniversary. Not one of his better works, but yeah, not exactly nimble. It took them 2 months to come up with this. I think, that says a lot.
Okay, we're going to have to be nimble because we only got about 3 minutes left in the show. But Fred, Nikki Ashton, an enthusiastic user of hybrid parliament, not in Ottawa very often, and then reporting this week from my colleague JP Tasker, takes the family to Quebec City and other places over the Christmas break at a cost of taxpayers. Jagmeet Singh seems to think it's all within the rules and it's fine. What do you think?
I think it's a huge problem, and I think she's done something here that is going to lead to major changes down the road. She is a big user of hybrid parliament, where she stays in Manitoba. I'm not sure if it's in the riding or not, but in Manitoba for the vast majority of the time. Took a Christmas vacation, essentially, called it a trip, charged taxpayers $17,000. Can't say who she met with on this trip, or won't say who she met with on this trip. This is a big problem. These are major red flags. Ethics Committee needs to look into this, and I think a lot of MPs are going to be quite upset with this and how she handled herself on this and how she's dealing with it. There needs to be a full investigation, and I think every 10 to 20 years something like this happens, new rules come in place, the disclosures, now that we're seeing this, about 20 years ago these new rules came in that we see why we have these numbers. We're going to see something new come from this.
Mel, a lot of stakeholder relations usually go on between Christmas and New Year's with the family in tow. I mean, what do you make of this?
Yeah, I'm going to leave maybe the cost to the side. The one thing that I, have an issue with is the idea of not coming very often into Ottawa. I'm a big fan of the hybrid parliament. I think it's great. I think if we want to encourage people who are young, who have young families to come into politics, then we got to make it a little bit more flexible. I think this will just be used by people who want to see hybrid parliament go away, which is not great. And I also don't think that it sends a great message to parents who are not in politics, who have no choice but to show up to work. I think it's a bit of a slap in the face, and I don't think it's the message that she's trying to communicate to people.
Okay, Greg, we got 60 seconds left. What are your thoughts on Nikki Ashton and her travel?
God love her. She flew to Quebec City on Christmas Day, working on Christmas Day, David, and then flew back to Ottawa on New Year's Eve, working on New Year's Eve. Is there any, and again, the issue is the NDP. This is exactly the red meat that they used to feast upon on the other parties. And I'm sure her colleagues are not very happy with her. And the fact that she had a really poor press conference yesterday where she was asked repeatedly who she met with and wouldn't or couldn't answer the question. It wouldn't surprise me that, this call may have come from inside the House. I'm sure her colleagues in her own caucus are not very happy with it.
Okay, that's Greg McKecker, and joining us from St. Francis Xavier University, where he majored in sarcasm. I'd like to thank you for making the effort to get here. Fred Delory, Melanie Richer, always appreciate it. Thanks so much, and thank you.